Great. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here on stage at IAA. And my name is Jennifer Schwarz. I'm Executive Director of EcoMotion, which is a global smart mobility community based in Tel Aviv. And I'm joined here by three co-founders, heads of startups in Israel, each of them innovating in the EV space. So we have Ofer Doron from EVR Motors, co-founder and CEO, Nir Zohar, who is a co-founder and chief commercial officer of Zuz Power, and Avinoam Rubinstein from Karar, also co-founder and CEO. So why are we talking about EV and startups and an ecosystem? I think what we're seeing here at IAA is that there's no question EV is part of our future of mobility and how both commercial vehicles and trucks and people will be moving. But with that comes new challenges and new opportunities. So all of us are coming from Startup Nation in Israel. And in Israel, we have around 650 startups in mobility. That's a lot of startups, considering that we have no car maker, Israeli car maker company, but what we do have is the brains and the talent to be innovating for where there's great needs and challenges. So as we see the future of EV, it actually creates a new opportunity for it. And so today we're going to be talking about what are the new technologies coming out from startups in Israel. And it's not just Israel, but it's actually globally that we need startups in order to power an EV future. So let's just start with an introduction from our panelists about what each of the companies are doing, what's their focus area. So tell me, what is the challenge that you're addressing, and what is the solution that you're bringing to the market? What's unique about each of your companies? Give me the elevator pitch for our IA audience.
So EVR Motors has designed an improved topology for radial flux motors, and that lets us make motors that answer the main desires of the OEMs. That's to make the motors lighter, smaller, and lower cost, and with lower capex and easier to assemble and flexible. So this new topology does all of that. We didn't know it all when we started inventing it, but we started going there, and the success has been quite phenomenal with the technology. And we think this is much of what the EV ecosystem needs as it strives to make the cars and the two-wheelers and the boats lighter, lower cost, more flexible, easier for the OEMs to build, and more importantly, easier and more affordable for the customers to buy.
Great. Zuz Power. Tell us about what's unique about Zuz Power.
What Zuz Power is doing is enabling fast EV charging anywhere, even at locations where the grid is weak. Fast EV charging requires a lot of power, and this power is not readily available at locations where we want to charge our cars. So what we have invented, developed, and patented is a special boosting technology based on our flywheels. We have a flywheel kinetic storage and boosting technology. And what's so special about it? This boosting technology, as opposed to chemical power boosters or chemical storage devices, it's a mechanical storage device. By that, it is totally sustainable. It has an almost unlimited lifetime. We're talking about 200 lifetime cycles, charge and discharge cycles, as opposed to batteries which have several thousand, 3,000, 4,000, or 5,000 batteries, lifetime cycles.
Karar.
Thank you, Jennifer. So in Karar, we actually started Karar to address significant challenges in the EV industry. There are a few that we kind of found out that has to be addressed by a new way of thermal management solution for the EV. One of the major ones are, of course, fast charging, as I'm mentioning here, and by many people, kind of the fact that today it takes a few hours to charge a car overnight, or if you go to a public system, it takes half an hour or more. It's not acceptable. People would like to have kind of a way to charge their cars when they drive, and we're not afraid to kind of design their travel plan. So we came with a solution that allowing fast charging by the fact that we can dissipate enough heat from the car, so the OEMs will be able to allow 5 minutes or few minutes charging using our thermal management system. On top of that, the second very serious issue with batteries is, of course, the fact that sometimes they might catch fire. And when they catch fire, it's very difficult to control the fire. So in Cora, our solution actually addressing this issue by the fact that we can dissipate more heat than generated by the batteries that are actually catching fire. And with that, we actually preventing thermal runaway and thermal propagation. On top of that, when using Cora system, you actually taking advantage of the fact that we're keeping the batteries in the right temperature all the time, regardless of the ambience or the way you use the car. So we can extend the battery lifetime significantly. So for example, for a fleet manager that has 50,000 buses in India, we calculate that we can save roughly $500 million every year on the operation cost.
So I want to categorize what am I talking about when I say EV ecosystem? Electric vehicles started to solve a major global climate crisis, which is CO2 emissions. But on the way towards a CO2-free world, we actually are creating more problems. So by solving one problem, we actually are creating more problems and more challenges. And we're seeing that in upgrading the performance of EVs and reducing the weight of the vehicle and the many challenges that batteries bring in the charging speed and the charging infrastructure that now cities and governments and countries need to implement. And so the ecosystem here is we're looking inside the car, we're looking at the motor, we're looking at the batteries, we're looking at the charging infrastructure, and each of these are opportunities for innovation. And that's, again, as I said, what Israel has to bring to the table in many ways through startups. But for our friends at IAA, let's talk about what is a startup? Like, how does a startup operate, and where's the source of this innovation coming? Tell us more, Ofer.
Well, a startup, zero bureaucracy. You put on your running shoes and you run, and you see where you want to go, and you do something. You have a lot of smart people. Don't start a startup if you don't have a lot of smart people. You have a lot of smart people. Many of them should be thinking outside of the box. A few should still know how to do some real work. And then they start running. And you don't have a purchasing department, and you don't have a big legal department, and you don't have all those people in the organization that tell you what not to do just to keep the organization safe. So you run. And if you've got smart people, we've got fantastic people. We've got 5 PhDs out of 40 people. They're thinking all the time. I give them a problem. They say, why do we have a 1% difference here? They say, we have no idea. 2 days later, they've got the solution. I say, how do you prove that? We have no idea. 2 days later, they've invented a device to prove it. So they're running all the time. And I think this is what startups bring to the ecosystem, the ability to innovate, the ability not to try to get out of the box, but not to get into the box in the first place. And just keep running and running and change direction. Whenever you come across a problem, either solve it very quickly or find a different way to do it or die. So.
You need to be crazy to start a startup. You need to believe in the cause.
Is that a confession?
Yes, it is. You need to believe in the cause. Don't let anyone tell you, because everyone will tell you, no, it is difficult, it's a problem, it won't help, it won't materialize. For example, in our case, we have a flywheel. The first people we approached said, oh, another perpetuum mobile. We listened, but we continued our journey. We made it, and we need to believe it. We believed in it, and you start with nothing. We were 3 founders. We started with nothing. We sat in one room. There it started. We started step after step, convincing the government to get some funding, convincing external funds, and step by step, if you believe and you have a good product and you have a good idea and good technology people, then and the market must be there. The market must be there, because if you do something which is very nice and very innovative, but no one needs it, so we won't sit here.
Great. So that brings me to my next question. Explain the business model of a startup. How do you find your product market fit, especially when you're in a niche area of EV, electric vehicles, within a larger automotive industry? Tell us more about finding the right business model.
So you have to realize who the customers are. In our case, it's tier ones and OEMs, what they want to do. They want to manufacture for their customers. If it's the tier ones, it's for the OEMs. It's for the OEMs, it's for the end users. And they don't want to take big risks. What do we want to do? We want to innovate. I definitely don't want to manufacture, and I definitely don't want to take non-technological risks. So I don't want to hire hundreds and thousands of people, and I don't want to set up big logistics. It's not my business. My core business is innovating. And so the business model we've come up with is working with the motor manufacturers, the tier ones and the OEMs, who want to manufacture better motors. And who all have engineering teams who are designing motors by the book, very nice ones, and we're designing motors not by the book, even nicer ones in most cases. And they have to set up manufacturing lines and all the infrastructure and put out all the CapEx anyways. If we can come with a product, which we do, which has lower CapEx, more flexibility that addresses a wider customer base, and is easier and lower cost to assemble, they're happy and they'll work with us. And that's our business model. So we get royalties. We make nice margins off the royalties. We don't take the huge CapEx risks, which they know how to take and we don't. We don't take the huge manpower and growth risks, which they know how to take and we don't. We do take the technology risks, which is what our investors are investing in us for. And up to now, it's been going extremely well. So it's a pretty unique sort of, almost a software model. We are supplying some of the hardware, the specialty hardware. We saw that the customers don't want to manufacture coils by themselves. It makes them antsy. We said, great, we'll manufacture the coils, and we've set up a coil manufacturing plant in India. But basically, it's a hybrid motor sale, tech licensing, and component manufacturing model that we've put together with our customers that seem to be very happy with it.
Do you want to give some contra about how different startups find their product market?
So actually, first to address kind of what makes startup. Actually, you need to. There is a short rules. You need to identify large market. You need to have a technology that typically can improve the existing solution 10x at least. Otherwise, the mature other vendors will stay there to continue to support whatever they do in the past. And you have the best team in the market that can really help provide the right solution that works for the customer requirements. For Corar point of view, we are building hardware similar to the other companies here. We're building battery modules. We're building cold plate based on our unique technology of two-phase system. And what we are actually doing is working with the OEMs and the tier ones, actually creating around us an ecosystem of multiple companies, tier ones that the OEM recognize and kind of used to work in the space that we are working in. And by the end of the day, we'll provide them a solution and products. So our plan is to sign an agreement with relevant contract manufacturers that will build Corar products, battery modules, cold plate for two-phase, that we will be able to sell to be integrated in the variety of vehicles that will use our solution. So it's kind of a different concept.
We have a product. We are selling a product, and we want to sell the product. And this is what we are doing. Our product is a heavy product. It's a power booster, and it's not a small PC board or something like this. The way we are doing it, we cannot do it by ourselves. Our core technology is invented and developed back at home at Zeus Power. The first systems we are building ourselves. We also developed the production process, and then we outsource for mass production. Again, this is not our core competency to do mass production. But this is the way we are doing it.
Say more about mass production.
Okay. When I'm traveling in the field and I'm offering our system to big companies like OEMs and so on, they said, okay, you can do 1, 2, 3, 10 units. What if I want 1,000? This is mass production. And then we partnered to globally companies who can take the production file and build it depending on the pipeline which we are forecasting to them. So they said, just tell me how you want in the next month or in the next 2 quarters, and they do any quantity you want. We cannot do it. So what we are doing is we develop a version, we release it, they can do mass production, and we are working on the next release. So we are always one step ahead, developing the next phase, developing the production process, and then transfer it to the mass production.
Right. So each of you are working within the automotive industry in some way. What are the challenges? How does a startup start to enter corporate businesses, big industry players, and bring your innovation to the table? What are the challenges along that journey?
The first challenge is probably trust. This is a small startup. Is the technology going to work? Who are we working with? Are they going to be around? Do they know how to work with us? Working with their legal departments, challenging. We don't have a horde of lawyers that have done years of working with them. So it's a learning process for us. It's a difficult process for them. And especially when we start getting more and more customers, managing many of these processes is quite challenging. A second challenge is, in many cases, not invented here. In our case, for some of the customers, they've got motor departments. They're already doing motor departments. The scouter comes up and says, we've got an interesting company from Petah Tikva in Israel who says he's doing better motors than you are, he says to the motor department manager, which immediately makes me the most popular guy on the block, and it's an uphill battle many times. But it's part of the fun, and once you've got measured results and you can show how good you are and how low cost we are, then we start running forward. So I think the 2 main challenges are trust and the bureaucracy.
The bureaucracy.
Yeah,
and to add to it, we have similar challenges. Also working with those big OEMs in Germany, wherever they are, they said, who are you? What can we do? Lucky for us, most of them know that they need to outsource innovation. So we attended to several innovation challenges and presenting our product, our vision, and we were chosen by them. So this opened us the stage to present what we can do and what we want to do. I must say we did it very well, so we were chosen. Another challenge is working with a big company is the slowness of the company. They all want to be fast, but they are never fast. You start the process today, you might finish it in 18 months, which is a good... And the startup needs to have air to breathe for 18 months to do this. You need to perform in those 18 months. And what we found out that our best performance was and is when we looked at it in a holistic view and we did whatever we could do also instead of the customer. So we took away all the barriers for him to adopt us. I didn't say who are our customers. We are working mainly with CPOs, charge point operators, and EPCs who are setting up charging infrastructure. So we provide them not just our technology, not just our product, but an additional layer of value-added services. And
what are some of the barriers that you're saying that you've experienced? You said we break down the barriers that might be inhibiting speed to market, speed to implementation.
So this industry is it's a long process industry. It's like a marathon, right? Releasing a new vehicle to the market in any way takes few years. You need to go through all the OEM, the tier ones need to go through all these processes of regulation, approval, testing, and then set up their manufacturing capability to this new vehicle. So this is a very challenging setup for fast-moving company startups that has what we believe kind of something that we're really going to help them to be more successful with the customers and very innovative. So it's a very challenging situation for us and for any startup. How you match up between the speed and the go-to-market strategy of the OEMs and the ecosystem they have, which is the T1s and the company they used to work with, and the legal process. So we remember our first engagement with one of the largest German OEMs. They brought kind of a big pile of legal documents. So we kind of had to work with the innovation team to change the amount of legal documents that to change the process in a way. So it's a very, very challenging on one hand. By the end of the day, they need to work toward the startups, but the startup need to create the environment that will help them to work with us. So from Karar point of view, what we decided to do is really, as I mentioned, to work with and build the right ecosystem around the company. So companies that they know, they work with in our field, they can be our partners, either from the product point of view, from the go-to-market strategy point of view, even from investment point of view. And they can, one hand, advise the company on the right process, put their process and can offer us to use some of their processes so we help us to grow our matureness as far as the capability to work with those different OEMs and their processes. So it's kind of a matchup game between the way the OEM used to work and expect their vendors to work and the way the startup typically wants to work. And it's kind of a build-up of this process internally in the startup and in the OEM. I think that we are living in a major paradigm shift, right? Moving from an internal combustion engine to electrical vehicles. That's a major, major change in this industry. And some of that is actually affecting the OEM and their processes as well. They have to make some fast-moving, otherwise competitors from other places will come and take a certain portion of the market. We can help in this process, grow our capabilities internally, working with the ecosystem that we've built around us, and then expecting the OEMs to improve their processes in order to be able to work with new technology that we bring to the table.
And maybe I'll add an example of helping the customer solve the problems, because if you've created problems and they don't know how to solve them, they're not going to work. So when we started working in India, our stator needs not laminations like normal stators. We use what's called a soft magnetic composite, which is a powder metal. And the process for manufacturing that is straightforward, but it's different from what normally exists in motors, and the capacity wasn't there in India, and the Indian regulations mandate made in India for most parts of the motor. So we went to our US partners who design and manufacture our soft magnetic composites for us and said, why don't you set up a manufacturing base in India? And we've been working together for 2 years on this. That we hosted them at our booth and Auto Expo in Delhi, beginning of the year, where they met multiple different potential partners, and they are hopefully going to be soon closing an agreement with one of the companies presenting here at IAA to set up a manufacturing capability in India. And so we've managed, hopefully, very soon, to solve the supply chain issue that was troubling our customers. The same is what we did with our coils. We set up a coil manufacturing facility in India to manufacture the coils for them because they were concerned about the difficulties of manufacturing the coils. So a startup, it's not enough to come with the technology. You have to understand what is stopping the customers from adopting it and find a way to solve it.
Right. Even if you are addressing a big pain point within the market.
It's more than that. As a startup, when you are addressed by a big OEM, you're very happy and excited. You fill out all those legal documents, and then you have an innovation product. And you think, well, if I'm good, they will buy it. No, it's not working like that. The innovation, the gap between innovation and the business unit, there is a gap. So you can have a good product. The innovation certified you, but it doesn't mean yet that they will buy it. Because the role of the innovation department is to have technologies scanned. Only after that, they are looking at the business. So you have some disappointment at that phase too.
So I guess it backs up what you said before. You have to be courageous, brave, and a little bit crazy to start a startup. So I want to ask each of you a separate question based on what you're doing to highlight more that specific challenge area. So let's start with EVR Motors. You mentioned your work in India. You've closed several contracts in India to manufacture motors for a variety of vehicles, starting with two-wheelers, three-wheelers, and commercial vehicles. Is this part of your journey to reach larger OEMs, or how do you reach larger OEMs and grow?
Absolutely. When we started working and looking at the market, we had to decide what sectors we want to enter and what geographies we want to enter, and it's obvious you can't do everything at once. And we decided to start with smaller motors for a variety of very, very good reasons. Looking back on it, fantastic decision. And smaller motors are two-wheelers, three-wheelers, boats, auxiliary motors, et cetera, And next we said, okay, what market do we want to start working in? And we looked at several parameters. The first is, where's the market growing quickly? Well, China's out, A, because we don't want to go to China at all because of IP issues, and B, because it's pretty saturated. But India is by far the largest two-wheeler market in the world, 20 million a year. More importantly than that, they're going very strongly for an EV ecosystem with a lot of government incentives to do that, both on the supply side and on the demand side. And even more importantly than that, the industry there is hungry to innovate and to work with innovative companies in order to get an edge on technology. So as opposed to many of the European companies or Western companies where you have to fight an uphill battle to get in the door, they are actively looking for innovations which they would like to embrace and get a head start on the others. Add to that excellent engineering capabilities. Add to that the fact that the cost sensitivity of the Indian market is crazy, way beyond the tough cost sensitivity of all automotive markets. So if you can make it in the Indian market, and if you work with the Indian engineers to design for cost, you've got a product that's well designed, very low cost, and you can do amazing things with it later on in Europe, in the US, in Japan, et cetera, which is where we're starting to go now. So India was a very natural first step. People do tell us, India, very difficult to work with. Guys, India's fantastic to work with. A lot easier than working sometimes with Germans or Japanese or many, many others. Yes, you do have to learn a few things about how to do it. So we're very, very happy working in India. And they move so much faster, which is super important for a startup. So we're going to have, we've got 4 customers signed already, 1 small OEM and 3 tier 1s, and we will have at least 3 production lines up and running next year, pumping out motors for the Indian market and for export markets from India. So, and this couldn't have happened at that pace, I believe, anywhere else in the world. Maybe in China, but again, that's out.
So you're just highlighting how many considerations a startup needs to take when seeking to scale, when seeking to enter a market, for adoption, et cetera. It's not just the product, it's the culture, it's the geography, it's the scale, it's the potential partner.
And if you miss out on one of those, you're in trouble. If you miss out on more than one of those, you're dead. And it's the CEO's job and the board's job and some of the management job to really look at the very large picture, not just at the technology. It's very tempting to dive deeper and deeper and deeper into the technology and lose sight of what the specific market wants and how to solve all those problems.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna pivot over to Avinoam and Karar, and let's talk about batteries for a minute. What's the connection between battery charging and improving the battery life and cooling? Because if I just focus solely on batteries within the EV ecosystem and world, it's creating many, many problems, many, many challenges or uncertainties, you can say. explain more about the connection there and how Karar is addressing
So
that.
before Ofer, you really convinced me that that everybody should go to India. So
I just got a new idea. This is what having a startup ecosystem is about.
too.
yeah. So actually, we all know batteries in the electrical vehicle is the most expensive component in the car. Sometimes it's 50% of the cost of the car. Sometimes it's 40% of the cost of the vehicle. So it's a really, really important technology and capabilities that the functionality of the car, the vehicle is actually depending on. And there's many different type of battery technology, battery chemicals. But today, most of the battery technology actually rely or affected heavily by temperature, by the fact that the temperature of the battery, either very cold temperature or very hot temperature, actually affecting immediately the performance of the batteries. Basically, you cannot take enough energy from the batteries if it's a very cold or very hot. On top of that, if the battery temperature is beyond or below the temperature range that the battery is actually designed to work, they started to degrade. And it's a major effect if you are actually putting the batteries in let's say high temperature, 10 or 15 degrees above the allowed temperature. You might lose 50% or even 75% of the lifetime of the batteries, which means that the battery that has been designed to work 12, 15 years might work only a few years, 2 or 3 years. That's a major issue. It's a major issue because, unfortunately, if you're trying to have fast charging or fast acceleration, you actually creating a lot of current, or you need to inject a lot of current, and that's caused a lot of heat that the battery has to dissipate. If you are not capable to dissipate the heat, the environment that the batteries are in getting hotter and hotter, and that's immediately affected the immediate performance and the long-term lifetime. And of course, if it's extreme, it must cause even fire and thermal runaway. So this is the whole temperature control. It's actually very important in regular car because that's the reason we have radiator and the system to cool the motor, but in batteries it's much more important because the temperature range of the batteries is strict. Today is roughly between 15 degrees C to 30, 35 degrees C. So let's assume you are in India and the outside temperature, the ambient temperature is 40 degrees C, then immediately the outside temperature doesn't allow you to operate the car properly. You might have immediate degradation, or the performance will go down. And so we are talking, for example, to a few Indian companies that design batteries and powertrain where the three-wheeler trying to go up the hill and doesn't go. So it's a very challenging process. But even here in Europe, if you're trying to charge a vehicle or trying to get a sport car to drive very fast, the issue of heat will affect you immediately. And so the capability to control temperature is critical. In Karar, what we came is a new solution that have the same capability like an air condition. So it's not just dissipate the heat, but it actually can set the heat. So we are kind of unique in a way that even the outside temperature is 40 degrees C, the battery temperature could be very unified in 25 degrees C, like the same concept of an air condition, but in a different way of implementation. So that's kind of what Karar is very different than other solutions in the marketplace. And of course, we can dissipate typically 3 times more than other solutions, same size, same cost, and same weight. So it's very important to have this capability in order to allow better performance, longer lifetime, and even control potential fire.
Great. Zeus Power.
Yes.
We're from batteries to the charging infrastructure.
Yes.
There's now a race to develop new charging infrastructure. what does it take to scale a new technology in what has become an increasingly competitive environment?
What we are facing now, as you said correctly, the industry is running. They are producing more electrical cars than the infrastructure can support. So there is a race to set up infrastructure. And in this race to set up infrastructure, they are looking for as many as possible locations to set this infrastructure up. But those locations were not built and were not designed for this revolution. The power grid cannot support the charging infrastructure at those locations. So this is the challenge of those who are rolling out. We are in contact with CPOs in Europe, in North America. All of them have the same problem. They need to provide fast charging, and there is not enough power there. This is their challenge. Our challenge is to support them, and this is what we are doing. We are enabling them to choose a location of their choice, and even if there is not enough power in this location at their choice, we can enable them to charge the car there fast. And this is what we are doing with them.
And how do you scale that? What's the
way we scale it, I mentioned it before, we're a company, a small company from Israel, a startup. So we have a limited or finite capacity.
Right.
We are working with outsourcing production companies who are taking our production file, developing it for cost reduction, and then they scale it up.
Okay, so now I want to talk about a common challenge of startups broadly across Israel. All the startups are facing this, and especially in the year 2023, because what a startup needs to continue to innovate is money.
Yes.
all the heads nod at that same exact moment. First, just overall, what's the experience of fundraising in today's environment?
Well, for me today is 10 years ago when we started.
Right.
I want to say that the Israeli government is funding startup. If you have a good idea, you get fund from the Israeli government, which needs to keep you running for 2 years. After 2 years, you need to prove that you have done something with the money, which is viable, and then you need to go to the next step. The next step, which is called usually the Death Valley. If you then don't do anything, if you don't do anything with this great idea and this great product, and no one buys it, you are mostly of your own. And from that, you need to look for your own funding.
Would you be raising a seed round?
Yes, seed rounds. For that, you are on your own. We did it. We raised money after those 2 years. We are still here, as evidently. And 2 years ago, about 2 years ago, we went public on the stock exchange in Tel Aviv. And now we are looking for the bigger stage in North America at the NASDAQ.
So give me some perspective on the startup's need to fundraise these days, and how does that influence the advancing innovation?
So funding is always a challenge. It's always, for the investor, it's always a trade-off between risk and investment, between how much traction and how long and what the business case is looking at and who else is participating. And for the startup, it's an interesting challenge to convince them that this is the place they want to put their money. These are tough times all over the world. There are some areas that are tougher than others. Unfortunately, automotive hardware is probably pretty close to the top of the list on where it's difficult to raise money. But there is money out there. And the job of that money is to find good technology. So if we're good enough, we get the money. And you've got to work at it. And it's probably the least fun thing about running a startup. Everything else I really enjoy. Fundraising is not the most fun. But it's part of life. And you know what? Compared to the punishments one gets when working in corporate, working with investors is way funner.
I look at fundraising as a sales. You need to sell your idea, you raise fund, and then you need to sell your product.
Yep.
So yeah, fundraising is always fun. It's definitely a challenge, but I think that one of the challenges is actually through the process of the fundraising, actually, you can get engaged with people in the industry or people that can lead you to using their relationship. So actually choosing not just the right just the funding, but the right partner that by the end of the day going to take a share in your company, and it's very, very important to have the right partners when you're building the company. Because I've seen, this is my startup number 4 or 5, depending how you count. So, and I've been on the VC side as well. So really I've seen startup that amazing technology, amazing potential market, and the thing that didn't work is actually the relationship with the investors or the shareholders after they invest. And that's very keen actually to have the right funding on one hand, on the other hand, to have the right team around the table to actually help the company to grow and to create the right relationship for it. And to understand the process, how to grow the company. So this is kind of the combination of funding, getting the funds, it's always a challenge, but getting the fund from the right team or the right group or the right person, it's even harder.
So we have just a few minutes left, but if you have an opportunity to send a message to investors right now, specifically about the EV ecosystem and the opportunities for new innovations, new technologies to be integrated in order to advance electric vehicles, what would be your message to investors?
So maybe I'll start by this time. So I think that this is, as I mentioned, it's a major paradigm shift here. So it creates a lot of opportunity to new players to get in, to come with new ideas, new solution, and take advantage of this huge market that's actually growing in front of us. So if we believe the forecast in 2030, half of the new cars that are going to be produced are going to be EVs. So we're talking about 30, 35 million vehicles that are going to be EV-based, completely BEV. That's a huge opportunity. Not every decade if when you have the opportunity to participate in this kind of major change in a very huge business opportunity. So if any of the company that here and other companies in Israel and other places, startups, will be successful to be part of that, it's a huge opportunity to change and bring new ideas, new ways to improve the world and get significant value out of that.
Sure.
I think the market today is the point where it will start to explode. Until now it raised, but now we will see an exponential growth. And this is exactly the opportunity for investors to ride the wave. This is the opportunity for the investors to invest in different technology startups, whoever in his category. But we feel that now is the point where it's more and more, and then it's growing.
I agree. There's always a lot of hype going around. And one of the major risks for investors is determining which markets are actually going to grow. Autonomous driving has not grown as fast as people had hoped. Electrification is going to grow. I think that's very clear to everyone. Now, what battery technology exactly and whether hydrogen will come in as well, a lot of good questions. And how fast will the infrastructure catch up with the number of vehicles and enable the growth of the market? But there is no doubt that it's going to grow very, very fast. There's also no doubt that relative to many other technological fields, there aren't a lot of startups in this area. So you've got a lot of market growth, relatively few companies with a lot of brain power in them. You've reduced many of the risks that kill a lot of the startups. Then the investors who do want to look at this stage need to get some domain expertise, and they need to get unbiased, independent domain expertise. Because when you go and ask, if you're a VC funded by a couple of tier ones, for example, if you go to the tier one motor guys or tier one charger guys, they're going to be talking about comparing to what they're doing now and with all their fears and not invented here and all their problems. Get some, tell me about it.
We just have a few seconds left before we have to wrap up.
So get the right advice and go for it, because it's a fantastic field to invest in.
fantastic field to invest in. I think we've seen here an example of where there are opportunities to innovate and also to invest in for new innovation. So thank you for showcasing what it is to be a startup in the EV tech space, and hoping that OEMs, tier one suppliers, and all the ecosystem who needs technologies and innovations like you also look to startups as sources for those for solutions. So thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Dankeschön, der IAA.
Over there.